My name is Patrick Woods. I am a member at Asbury-United Methodist Church in Topeka, Kansas. But I love the United Methodist Church because it is a place where, literally, I know this is cliche because we say it all the time, but it is a church with no walls. Really, it is a community of faith in which people with shared values and shared faith are going out and trying to change the world with their faith. That's one of the reasons why I joined the United Methodist Church as a college student. One of the needs that we identified when we did the Hands on Topeka project, we looked and we thought about, okay, in the broader sense, so this is just not one church and we're not looking at the needs that kind of manifest themselves, with our congregation. What is something that this church can do that, number one, fulfills our obligation as believers in Christ, that puts us in a position to actually show what we believe to the broader community. We identified parks. We thought about schools, but there is already another church organization in Topeka that does a pretty massive school cleanup type activity in the fall. So we thought, okay, we will, in order to cooperate as best as possible with this other group, and also since they're already into this type of thing and we know it, we're going to call upon them and leverage some of their energy. We decided to hold our event in the spring, close to Easter. It really rang beautifully because it was, close to Easter, and we could actually do it right then, and in which at a time that is especially important for us as Christians. We identified parks because parks are something that they're public. They're for everyone. In Topeka, luckily, we're in a position where it's an older, city, relatively speaking, in Kansas standards. There's a park in about, 1 mile radius from every old neighborhood in Topeka. And there's a lot of good that we can do. Tons of people use them. It is a place that fosters healthy development in children and families. So we really need to be pressing our message there. And it's a place where the city could use a lot of help. So what we did is we sat back and surveyed the landscape and thought about who in the world could possibly share, have an interest in this mission with us. Our former district superintendent, who I believe in her former life was like the community organizer of all community organizers, was extremely good, and she was intrepid in terms of having a Rolodex where she knew everyone and knew exactly what they could provide. She bought a bunch of us as kind of her district leadership team in to do the exact same thing with our Rolodex. We looked at the people who shared an interest in this. First of all, we identified a nonprofit civic organization whose sole purpose is to clean up, public spaces and to have good, healthy green space in communities. We brought them on board and we tried to figure out what role could they possibly have for us, even if it's not, the role that we initially envisioned. They need to be involved. Because, an inkling of a relationship could develop into something big. We thought, okay, well, first of all, we're going to need to partner with the city. They have, a motive for us wanting to be successful in this. So we worked with the city, and then we turned directly around and used their resources in terms of their Rolodex and who they work with on already doing these type of things. To reach out to even more people who shared an interest in this. In just about every single church, we had someone who worked for or had a relationship with some other civic organization who would care about this, or who would like to be out, and the common thread was all of these people were believers. We identified additional partners. The Women's Correctional Facility, which is close to one of the parks in which we were working. And just so happens that somebody who attended one of our churches who was interested in this happened to work for the Department of Corrections. So I paid a visit to this particular employee at the Department of Corrections, and we had bought on board a significant group of residents at the Women's Correctional Facility in Topeka, who were going to go out and help clean up one of these parks on behalf of and as a part of this ministry with the United Methodist Church. So in one organization, we had folks who actually weren't even members of the church but supported what we were doing and thought it was great that we were going out to do this. Being one of the fellowship Bible churches, the one that had their fall cleanup of schools. We had Keep America Beautiful, which is the nonprofit that works on cleaning up public green spaces. We had the Women's Correctional Facility. We had a member who happened to be a franchisee with Texas Roadhouse. So that person was bought on board, and before you know it, Texas Roadhouse was providing at an extremely discounted rate all of the food for all of the workers for our closing celebration. We ended up with, at the time I was working for the state, so we were able to, it was my job, I was the liaison with the city. So we were able to work with a couple of other state employees, certainly not proselytizing or anything, but who had connections with the city through the function of their job, to actually bring in some additional city resources. And it just went over well, like clockwork. We were able to nurture those relationships by making sure we kept in contact. The lines of communication were always open. We had already gained and won the trust, which is the critical piece of these other organizations, because they saw us out there with them, sweating, cleaning things up. And so they knew we were in it. They believed in us. So every time it was time to do this again, they wanted to be a part of it. And actually the organization ended up just growing. Partnerships, that's the key. The key to the whole thing, advancing beyond relationships where we can just simply relate with other people to partnerships, where it is an active partnership where we are both participating and we will both share in the success. That's how you get people on board and people to want to come back and stay on board. When they share and they realize that, this is truly a shared victory. It's a huge thing for Keep America Beautiful. A huge thing for us, was a huge thing for, can you imagine the folks in the Department of Corrections thinking that we are going to have this great opportunity, redemptive opportunity for our residents, for our inmates, the day before they got the call to ask them to do this? You think this was ever on their radar screen that they'd be able to do something like this for their folks? And we didn't ask for any, it wasn't about us. So, I would chalk that one up, though, of course, to Reverend Fisher's leadership. That was a very brilliant way to go about it, and the way she went about it that de-emphasized the us in the whole thing, and it was truly a shared effort, is why all those partners are still together, and it'll be a big deal this year, too. I remember the first year that we did it, and my church, Asbury-Mt, we were out at Central Park in Topeka. Central Park, for anyone from Topeka, knows that it is in an area that is what the city and the police department would call a high needs area. The reputation is not stellar. It is an absolutely wonderful place with wonderful people, with just as much potential and just as much community flavor and great things to see and great people to know as any other place. But because this is an area that is oftentimes viewed as part of the urban core and in the innermost part of the inner city, and we were at the community center cleaning up. We were all there out in mass in our red United Methodist t-shirts, and a bunch of the residents who live around in Central Park in the neighborhood, who weren't even signed up, weren't members of the church, they saw us cleaning up, came over, we gave them a lunch, and we put them to work. but of the 1,100 that were out that day total, we probably had a good 200 people, an army basically of people who were out cleaning this park. To see these people out cleaning this park, and in Topeka, parks are a really, really core element of a community's identity. Every old neighborhood has its own park. People still come there to play basketball. Most of them have community and rec centers associated with them. They come there to play basketball. They come there to play with their kids. They fish. Parks are very, very, very important in Topeka. So to see this group of 200 people was such a powerfully moving thing to this resident that she could not sit over at her house on her porch where she was sitting. She had to come over and join us. She ate lunch with us, and it was such a deeply moving thing. So it moves me to talk about it just because I think that really is the type of thing that we ought to be doing. And that is why I love the United Methodist Church. That's why it's my church. So, community. I think it really demonstrates when you go out and do something like that, the fact that for people who oftentimes we tend to think of, our neighborhoods as, in a very insular way in which, this is my area, that's their area, this is someone else's area. We really have a stake. We show that we have a stake in each other, and we believe that, we acknowledge it. We went out and did what we could for the community, regardless of whether they go to our church or not. And so I always think, being a firm believer in the, in the precepts of servant leadership, as was, set forth by Jesus himself, that whenever you do something for somebody, and you show that you actually recognize the fact that you have a stake in their success and you're doing it for them, you're serving them, it's not self-serving, you aren't expecting anything in return. You actually gain people's trust, and you gain the ability to influence them. And so as a church who's in the business of, winning hearts and minds and converting souls of people, I think that's a really powerful way to go about the business. So this is, it is my philosophy. This is why I love this church. This is why I'm a member of it. I have been on 2 separate occasions when I visited tons of churches and wanted to see what all kinds of different churches were about. I ended up every time at the conclusion that this is the place for me. If you really are in the business of trying to transform people's lives, and you really care most of all about trying to move people, alter their lives positively, the trajectory of people's lives, so they can fulfill their God-given potential. Whatever your talent is, if you're a teacher, if you are a singer, or if you have the ability to move people with word, whatever, you can do it in the United Methodist Church, and you can do it right there in your own community. You don't have to travel far, although we do, but you can do it right there in your own community. And the fact that you actually do things for people beyond talking to them is what gives you the ability to influence people. So what better tool do you need if you're in the business of trying to win hearts and minds and convert souls? If beyond influence, making people do things that they wouldn't normally do because they want to do them, because they think they're the right thing, because they believe you told them that this is what the Word says, this is what you need to do. You have, because you have exemplified Jesus's actions and servant leadership, they believe in you, so they're more likely to do it. That's I can't think of a better formula for being successful in that business. So.